rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. It's 2025. Everybody's here. Well, it kind of sucked the way it came in. Not necessarily for me, of course, but, for the folks in New Orleans. There were a few in Las Vegas and then also some in New York City that started their New Year's on the very bad track. Okay, so before I get into all the news that is news that's going along, first of all, let me just say, well, thank you, Bam, for saying nice sign. That I actually can't take credit for. That is Judge Wild. So let me get out of the way so you guys can see the work that he did. And I'm going to have to figure out a way to get that, because I actually like that. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to get it, put in. Yeah, it's not really a sign, but it's a background. And I think he actually did it through Grok. But anyway, I like the way it works. So I'm going to have to try and figure out how to get it into the broadcast, into the program. Maybe smaller, kind of up in the corner or something. I don't know. Anyway, we'll see. Although that does give me an idea for once we get, once I get a actual like permanent studio and that kind of stuff. It'll be, I'll have to figure out how to get a actual neon sign made like that. Cause I like that. That looks really, really good. So anyway, yeah, they do. It reminds me of like a beer sign in a bar window or, the open signs that they have, but hey, whatever. It works. I like it. So we'll have it around for a background here. I'll bring it up. There's a couple others that he did and sent over to me. So again, thanks to Judge for putting that together. I think he, like I said, I think he used Grok, but hey, whatever. I'm not all that AI proficient, which is cool. But that's okay. Anyway, so there you go. I thought I'd kick off the new year with a nice new background. All right. Let's go ahead and get things kicked off here. Wait a minute. Ugh, I hate it when I do this. Give me just a second here. I got to set up the guest because it was, well, let's see. Let's start it all over here. Go back up to the top. All right, tonight's Pledge of Allegiance, of course, is going to be starting off the year properly with Amy Jean Viner over on Rumble. So if you would please, if you don't mind, please stand, remove your hats if you're wearing them. Place your hand over your heart and let's follow along with Amy Jean Viner in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. And thank you, Amy, for sending that in. Do appreciate that. If you would like to hear your version of the Pledge of Allegiance played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself performing it in your style. Take that recording, whether it's audio, video, whatever, and send it off to me. All you need to do is send it into fans, FANS, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans at AmericanPerspective.online. And I'll get you into the rotation for that. All right, tonight's sponsor, we have the Institute on the Constitution, which was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission, and that is to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.americanperspective.online, to sign up, and while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.americanperspective.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.americanperspective.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.americanperspective.online. Take a look at this thing. It's got 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather wrapped around pages that are tear and water resistant. Not to mention the fact that they don't use cheap glue here. They stitched it all the way through the leather. Check that out. It goes all the way through the backside. It has rounded corners. As 3 Chevy says, it's the non-butt poking corners, rounded corners since 1776. Anyway, it is buddy tested, buddy approved, Billy tasted, Billy approved. My youngest whiskey warrior has confirmed that the information contained within it will get you your civics badge in Scouts. It probably also could get you your civics test as well if you're a non-naturalized citizen wanting to become a citizen. Sorry, I'm chuckling because Music Man is like, I've bought 12 so far. No, he's bought quite a few, and I appreciate that, believe me. Go to constitution.americanperspective.online to get yours today, and also don't forget to check out the rest of the Institute on the Constitution's offerings that are there on the website. You can go and check out all of that. And I do appreciate them for allowing me to be an affiliate. All right. So, unfortunately, we had some terror attacks. And yes, I am calling them terror attacks, unlike what the FBI started off saying, which was, no, this isn't a terror attack. Well, it was a terror attack. In fact, X, the people on X, were the ones that actually, I believe, called out a lot of stuff right away with the entire thing. And, shortly after the event happened, which apparently it happened at like 3:15 a.m. local time, there were a lot of people who were basically saying, yeah, this guy had a flag on the back of the truck, and that flag looks a little suspicious. Now, originally they accused the police for wrapping the flag up, but now current footage actually shows that the flag was wrapped prior to the driver going around the barriers. There's still a lot of questions on this, so be very cautious and very careful in terms of jumping to conclusions with regards to this entire thing, because the reality of it is that we're still learning about the information. We're still having information come in. For an example, the latest update is essentially that there were reportedly 4 individuals caught on video, and they were allegedly planting bombs, but those 4 individuals have now been cleared and were not involved. Okay. So again, I'm just exercise caution with everything that comes out with regards to this, but here's what seems to have been established. And I'm saying seems to have been because, of course, this is a developing situation. Things can change. We don't have the guy in custody. He was shot and killed by police. at the scene. So there is no real, there's only supposition as to why this guy did what he did. But here's what we know for a fact, okay? He has been identified as Texas native Shamsud Din Jabbar. He's 42. He drove what appears to be a rented truck into the crowd. He has killed 15 in total so far. There is at least another 30 injured. Okay. They also found a ISIS Caliphate flag, the black flag with the Sanskrit writing on it and everything that they use in many, if not all, of their videos and things like that whenever they're doing terrorist activities. That was apparently zip-tied, mounted on some type of a pole or whatever on the truck, the trailer hitch part of the truck. Okay. It was apparently rented by the company Turo, that's Turo, and had, according to some information data, that it had crossed the border from Mexico on November 16th. Now, there was an early report by Fox News that reported that it crossed over from Eagles Pass 2 days prior. Okay, but it wasn't 2 days. It was a couple of months ago that it happened. Now, here's the problem that we have with the mainstream media. And this is something that a lot of the leftists out there have been complaining about, which I don't know why they're complaining, because, I mean, CNN does this all the time, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, they all do it. The mainstream media has a serious problem with getting it right. They want to get there first. Okay. And so this is part of the reason why you can't trust the very first inclinations that come out. You must wait. Dan Bongino calls it his 72-hour rule. And I tend to agree with that, although it doesn't necessarily have to be 72 hours. But the point is that to take a minute to relax and wait. Now, one of the unfortunate things is that when you don't do that, you get caught in potential lies and potential misleading of people. For an example, like our newly elected president came out and said that this was a illegal alien that came in across the border and perpetrated this attack. He had apparently truthed that somewhere, or at least the leftists say that he did. I didn't really catch it, but that's okay. The point here is that we have further since found out that apparently this person, this individual, was a Texas native and was also in the Army Reserve, or had some sort of affiliation with the Army, had been in the Army for something, whether it was Army Reserve, Army National Guard, I'm not entirely 100% certain of, but he apparently spent time in the Army. Now, here's the thing, is that they have also had a link to him and the individual who perpetrated the Las Vegas Tesla, we'll call it a bomb just for a lack of information in terms of what it is, but I will get to that here in just a moment with regards to this. But the thing about it is that there seems to have been a link between the two. Now, avoid jumping to conclusions, because I can tell you this much. If they had an association at Fort Bragg, which is where, and Fort Bragg, by the way, is no longer Fort Bragg. It's kind of like Fort Hood. Fort Hood got renamed. Fort Bragg got renamed because of all the hubbub about the generals the generals' names that were being used part of the Civil War. Okay. Now, all of that being said and being the case, okay, the thing about it is that you have to understand that just because they were both stationed there has no bearing on whether or not these individuals actually had any communication or connection to one another. And I'm basing this off of my experience in the service, and I'm pretty sure just about anybody else can tell you, just because I spent time at Fort Hood doesn't mean I knew all, 100,000, 200,000 troops that were there. I can't recall how big Fort Bragg actually is, but the point is that they could have served at the same time period at the same place, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they knew each other. Until there is a connection made for that, let's just kind of leave that alone. They both apparently or reportedly have or were serving in the Army at Fort Bragg. Now, whether or not they knew each other, that's still up in the air. So let's avoid connecting those two dots completely. The chances are that there is a possibility of that connection, much more of a possibility than having one person at Fort Bragg and one person, say, at Fort Dix. They may or may not have known anything, okay? But the fact of the matter is that as of right now, we don't have any confirmed information to know whether or not these two events, these two individuals who perpetrated both of these, have any sort of connection outside of being veterans, outside of being potentially stationed at Fort Bragg at the same time. Okay? So, out of all of that, all right, let's just kind of get into a little bit more of the details that we know. We also know that there were explosives found at the scene. Again, this is still New Orleans. There were explosives found at the scene, and there is also officials that are now claiming that there's evidence that Din-Jabbar did not act alone. And they are suggesting potentially that that this was a coordinated terrorist attack. Now, regarding any improvised explosive devices that they had running around potentially in the French Quarter, it's already been swept and cleared as of now. There were some thoughts that people planted IEDs, but the reality of it is those 4 people have been cleared now. And they have not. Yeah, see, 3 Chevy points out tonight they said that he did act alone. So again, it's kind of going back and forth. The last I had heard was that they were still suggesting that he did not act alone. So, that could change. So again, anything that I'm telling you, kind of take it with a grain of salt. We've got to give it a little bit of time before what is out there. So, anyway, his truck apparently was filled with IEDs, pipe bombs, things like that. So yeah, so there's been some question on this also too, apparently, at least according to somebody on X, that New Orleans officers found an explosive device near the cathedral in the French Quarter, and they discovered 2 devices and safely detonated both of them. So, again, this is a developing story, so we've got to make sure that we don't jump to conclusions. But again, as I can tell you, it appears to have been a terrorist attack. It appears to have been by somebody who apparently was a U.S. citizen, a Texas native, who apparently had ties to Islamic State and was doing this for a terrorist reason. Okay, so that's New Orleans. So anyway, that's the stuff that we know at this moment for this, and we'll just have to see. It'll be a developing story. We'll have to see what the heck goes on. Now, while that was happening, we had another event happen over in Las Vegas. Now, Las Vegas, this one occurred at Trump Tower. And so far, the only person who's been killed in this particular event was the driver of the truck. Now, the driver of the truck has apparently been identified already. Again, like I said, this person has reportedly been a veteran. We can only follow with whatever the news media and whatever the authorities put out. But he apparently was also a veteran who apparently also served in the Army at Fort Bragg. We also know for purposes of information, correlation, not necessarily causation, that the second Trump assassin shooter that was caught at the golf course also visited Fort Bragg over 100 times. So again, there is some connection somewhere, potentially. We don't know 100% if that connection will bear out. But it was there. Now, this was a Tesla Cybertruck that was also rented from the company called Turo, Turo, and that this particular truck apparently had some sort of fireworks in the back in what they call the loading area. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it appears that the Cybertruck actually was essentially a reason as to why there wasn't more damage out at Las Vegas. Because the Cybertruck, I mean, as you have seen videos of it when it was coming out, they had Elon throwing rocks at it, hitting it with the sledgehammer, so on and so forth. And Elon kind of went to X and was like, it would, if it wasn't tragic that there was somebody that lost their life and 7 people were injured, you could almost say this might have been a marketing stunt for the truck, because apparently what ended up happening is the truck is so quote unquote well built that when the explosion went off, it actually directed the explosion upward rather than outward, because not even the lobby windows, and there's videos of this, not even the lobby windows and doors, which are made of glass, had any kind of apparent damage to them. So this particular event seems like they chose the wrong vehicle in order to do this in, even though they were, making a statement for this. Okay. So, anyway, they haven't, the last that I had heard, which of course this was a few hours ago, was that the FBI had not had the opportunity to fully examine the truck. So they don't really know what was detonated, how it was detonated. But I can tell you from seeing the security video footage of the truck explosion that at least there were some type of fireworks in it, because you can see some like mortars or whatever, the bigger exploding ones that go off in the sky. You can see those hitting the ground and exploding after the truck itself exploded. So there is obviously visual and video evidence. Well, video and visual are kind of the same thing, but evidence that there was some type of fireworks in the back, indicating that it may have been potentially the fireworks or the use of fireworks in order to create the incendiary device that would have essentially started the whole thing. There's also reports that the truck's batteries itself were not the cause, because of the fact that the fire fighters were basically able to put out the flames fairly quickly. You can't do that in a lithium-ion fire. In fact, more often than not, firefighters are told in a lithium-ion fire like that, okay, that it's better just to let it burn than to try to put it out, because you're not going to be able to. It burns so hot and so effectively that water itself can't put it out, and you need like special chemicals in order to do it. And so more often than not, they just let the thing burn until it burns out. They just keep it contained and let it burn out on its own. And that didn't happen here, because they went and they cleared, put the fire out, and then they were able to load the truck onto a trailer and take it off and cover it up and all this other stuff. So, and yeah, of course, Nana of JJS points this out. before the security footage was released, you could hear the fireworks in the lobby video. And what she's referring to there is a video that was apparently of somebody who happened to be close to the window at the time the thing exploded, who had claimed to have left their luggage sitting right next to the window, ran behind some of the elevators and happened to gain this footage of the truck burning in what appears to have been the valet lane, basically as close as it could get to the hotel without going over the curb. Yeah. So anyway, so there you go. And that's kind of what we know about this. But of course, the 24 hours is not over yet, because there was also an additional, and actually here, let me just show you this image, because this actually shows you take a look at this image. You can see the truck itself didn't really explode. It just, I mean, it's still technically intact for the most part. So yeah, that just gives you an idea in terms of the strength of the Cybertruck. Apparently the explosion wasn't enough to do anything to it. So whatever he used in the Cybertruck, whatever this person or this individual or individuals, persons unknown, did in the Cybertruck, it was contained within the cargo space for the most part, in terms of what happened there. So luck and good construction, I guess, is really the main thing. All right. So, yeah, and actually, let's see this. Yeah, it doesn't really. I mean, you can kind of see in some pictures. There's some pictures on X where you can kind of see a little bit of what appears to be like firework papers or something like that. Firework, remnants or whatever. So yeah. And apparently the Las Vegas sheriff agrees with Elon's assessment and said that the Cybertruck actually held its frame and limited the damage to the explosion, directing the blast upward. So, but anyway, let's see. So there's going to be more information that's going to come out about this. And of course, the Cybertruck's going to be talked about for quite some time. Elon also posted on X, with regards to the Cybertruck's information prior to the explosion. And in that particular sense, apparently what these things do is they continually update and send information about the vehicle itself that, Tesla is aware of. And I don't know about that. I'm not exactly sure, but I mean, I guess I would hope that they would let their customers know this. But that, to me, that would be kind of like, hey, this is a little bit of an invasion in privacy, isn't it? But then again, everybody uses a cell phone, and cell phones are tracked by the cell phone companies and all that. So maybe it's not so far-fetched to understand that. So, anyway. All right. And of course, the last event, which I don't have anything for necessarily, but I did hear about. Apparently there were 10 people shot. No, up to this point, I have not heard of anyone dying at a event or outside of an event venue in New York City. And apparently that there's no other information that I've been able to ascertain from that. It apparently occurred outside the venue. It was, several shooters, or there were reports of multiple shooters, multiple injuries. We'll just have to see how that goes, and whether or not that is any kind of connection to these other two, remains to be seen. My guess is, though, that particular event is probably more likely like a gang-related sort of scenario rather than necessarily a terrorist attack. Just the sounds of it right off the top just sort of it just sounds a little more like what would be considered a gang-related spontaneous event that rather than an actual terrorist attack. But again, that is another event that occurred during the last 24 hours. And so I'm just cautioning you. That's all that I have been able to ascertain, that it seems like that is what has been confirmed so far in all of these events. And I could be behind the times, but like I said, I'd rather be right than necessarily be first with the interview. And of course, the lefties were all talking about the mistake made by Fox News. Fox News jumped on it and tried to be first. So anyway, and it looks like that's not the only thing. Nana of JJS on Rumble says, then this afternoon, I-85 was shut down due to a bomb threat in a semi. So yeah, so there you go. Anyway. All right. So we'll just have to kind of see over time how this sort of plays out. But at this point, and another thing, I just got to say this with regards to whether or not the individual who perpetrated the New Orleans attack for sure, and potentially the Las Vegas attack, whether or not these people were veterans, Americans, whatever, especially with the New Orleans attack, because we know that he had a ISIS flag, and that is, it appears to be a Islamic State instigated attack. So we just, again, keep in mind, things are not always what they seem, and this is something that we need to make sure that we're accurate and that we're right before we really say anything. However, there is some sort of suspicion that's being placed out there, and questioning is not wrong. Questioning is definitely not wrong as to whether or not this is just merely trying to make it look like it is, or whether or not it actually is. Now, the one in New Orleans, given the history of a lot of these types of attacks, I would say is potentially just that. The one in Las Vegas, I think, was more politically motivated. And by the way, too, not confirmed, but it is certainly questionable as to whether or not these two individuals have been donating to Democrat causes. The one in New Orleans, apparently his name, which obviously is very unique, his name does show up on some, I believe it's Act Blue's listings of people who have donated to Democrat causes. So that one, likely that is it. Okay. It is exactly what it looks like. It was a terrorist attack. The man was known to be Muslim. There's video apparently that he did on a YouTube channel at one point. That people are claiming that he is the individual who is in this YouTube channel. So, yeah, anyway. And, there have been continual reports, by the way, that this gentleman in New Orleans, was radicalized a long time ago, and it caused him some problems, just being radicalized and that kind of thing. So, hat tip to Woodens or G over on Rumble, who brings that up. But I did hear about the fact that he was apparently radicalized. So that one, I think that one we can put to bed. That one was a terrorist attack by an Islamic State person. Now, what is concerning about all of this is, number one, the ties to our military. Provided that they are true, that begs the question as to how these individuals, first of all, were able to join the service and join the military, and if they had any red flags in their background, how did they not get picked up? The second red flag out of this, all of this incidences and everything else, is the fact that immediately thereafter, in New York City, there was a demonstration by Palestinian, I don't know what to necessarily call them, but by Palestinian sympathizers up in New York City. Folks, look, I'm just going to point this out. Whether it's illegal aliens who have crossed the border, whether it's homegrown terrorists, whether it's, people who are just here visiting, none of it matters. The fact of the matter is that Joe Biden and his administration have allowed lax and lackadaisical attitudes not only toward these individuals, but also have allowed several of them to come in here. If it comes out that these people were here in the U.S. and the people that helped them, for an example, the New Orleans guy, he turns out to be a Texas native and in the U.S., you've got to ask yourself, who radicalized him? How did he get radicalized? Especially when you consider the fact that he took an oath, the same oath that provided that he was enlisted. I haven't heard of his rank yet, but when you walk into the service as an enlisted individual, you yourself swear an oath of an allegiance to the United States of America, and especially to the Constitution in particular. That oath never expires. And the fact that he became radicalized later makes me wonder, in terms of him in particular, his particular actions. Okay? And so it's like, there may be more on this coming up. I do have a question of the week that got submitted to me for Saturday that may address this particular item. I haven't looked deep into it yet, but I will soon. But the point here is that we all have to be aware. We all have to understand that as we look at things like what's happening over in Europe, Europe is being completely radicalized and overrun by migrants and their population. There have been several stories of horrific stories of gang rape incidences that have skyrocketed in London, in the Great Britain area. London, England area. And Elon Musk has been, pointing them out and saying, hey, this is a problem. We're getting back, or we're getting to a point here, folks, that whether we know it or not, even though the Crusades happened hundreds of years ago, we're getting back to a point where there is a big challenge to, and again, I'm just going to point this out. This is just a visionary kind of a situation here. We're looking at good versus evil. This isn't anything necessarily political. I mean, there are political nuances to this thing. But if you look at it in a grand scheme, a 30,000-foot view, and look all across the world, there's a lot of stuff happening here that is a good versus evil type of scenario. And this is, keep your head on a swivel. Let's just put it that way. Okay? Keep your head on a swivel. Be very careful. Be very cautious, especially going to populated centers and areas. If you happen to live in a city, do your best. For those of us who live in more suburban and rural areas, we've got to understand that it's going to start likely in the cities and work its way outward. We have to be ready and available. This is not a period of time where we can sit on our laurels and think about, this is, it's not happening here. It's not happening here. It's happening everywhere, folks. It's happening everywhere. And we need to be aware of it. We need to be cautious of it, especially as we get closer and closer to the inauguration. Not saying necessarily that Trump's inauguration is going to be like this big powder keg, but it it potentially could be, because of the fact that Donald Trump represents, to a lot of people, regardless of the fact of whether it's the Democrats, the leftists, the Muslims, the Islamic, the Islamic Caliphate terrorist types, regardless of what he represents something. He represents to them a force that they need to fix, that they need to take on. And so this is why I'm just telling you, if at any other time in my life, just saying this, if at any other time in my life I have ever felt that where I've had a need to be prepared, this is it. I've never before been at the point where I felt like, you know what? Stuff's going on. I mean, Y2K, that was one thing, but that was a technology thing. This feels, dare I say it, a lot more elemental, a lot more, I can't even describe it. But anyway, so please be very cautious, be very aware of what's going on, keep your head on a swivel, and be very careful. All right. All right. Speaking of our wonderful Democrats in office, Joe Biden has announced that he is going to do what criminals often do when they have power. And that literally is, he is going to honor 2 of the January 6th committee panelists for doing illegal things. Here it is in the Populist Times. He's planning on giving both Cheney and Thompson, Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney, the second highest civilian award. Seriously? This guy, I'm telling you, lame duck president, this is in the Populist Times, lame duck president Joe Biden is awarding 2 members of the January 6th Select Committee with the second highest civilian award, called the Presidential Citizens Medal. President Richard Nixon created the medal in 1969. It only ranks lower than the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Okay. Yeah. I can't even understand. I can't even believe this. He's planning on giving former Republican Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson, who chaired the panel, and they're going to be among 20 recipients of the Presidential Citizens Medal. Today actually is when he's supposed to do it. I mean, he's congratulating them because, as you recall, Cheney and Benny Thompson both, as a part of the committee itself destroyed evidence. Cheney has been accused of tampering with a witness, Susan Hutchinson. The duo remains accused of destroying evidence when Kevin McCarthy, before he got kicked out, demanded its preservation, including over 100 encrypted files and up to 2 terabytes of data. Yeah. This is just crazy. But again, this goes to show you that a criminal is going to reward other criminals. Now, Joe Biden probably doesn't have any idea that he's even doing it. He probably thinks that Liz Cheney is like his daughter or something because he's so mentally gone. But all of that being said, they went ahead and handed out these medals to these potential criminals. And I say potential because we haven't, I mean, other than the fact that we know that they did it, we don't know how much of a hand either one of these two individuals had in the entire thing. But the fact of the matter is that, again, Liz Cheney got rewarded, and so did Benny Thompson. They got rewarded for doing the wrong thing, essentially to cover up for this administration's criminal enterprises and activities. So, yeah. Now, according to the piece here, the list of the 20 that were there seemed to be intended, the list itself seems to be intended to send a political message. So outside of, Cheney and Thompson, they had a couple people who fought to legalize same-sex marriage, former Representative Carolyn McCarthy, who was an anti-gun advocate. The list also included other politicians and Biden allies, former Senators Chris Dodd and Ted Kaufman, as examples of all of this. The White House also strongly defended Cheney's record on defending freedom, dignity, and decency and working across party lines, which is a bunch of crap. Anyway. So yeah, that's once again he went ahead and put them together. Now, do not be surprised. Just saying this right out in front of everybody. Don't be surprised if you see pardons going out for Benny Thompson, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, all the other stuff. I can almost guarantee you that Biden, or at least his surrogate Jill, will make Biden sign a piece of paper that will pardon all of them to avoid them from getting prosecuted for their crimes of witness tampering and evidence tampering. All right. So, as you recall, before the New Year's break, I was telling you how Mike Johnson, that's who it is. Mike Johnson was potentially on the ropes for his, essentially for his speakership. Okay. And it appears that tomorrow, January 3rd, is going to be his day in front of all of his peers as to whether or not he is going to become Speaker of the House yet again. Now, he announced not too long ago, by the way, that he had the votes. There are a couple of key votes, though, like Chip Roy and Thomas Massey, who are bringing that kind of into question as to whether or not he'll have the votes. So we'll have to kind of see. But of course, because of the terrorist attacks in New Orleans and apparently the potential terrorist attack in Las Vegas, nobody's really been talking about this. And essentially what we're looking for tomorrow is the fact of whether or not they vote him back in as Speaker, I believe. So let's see. I just want to make sure of this. Oh, and don't forget the January 6th also is coming up, which the House certifies the election results. So that one's, of course, coming up. And so tomorrow, January 3rd, is when the new Congress and Senate get together, and that's when they vote for the House Speaker. So I'm going to be watching this. Going to have to. But I'm going to be watching this, and it's going to be interesting, to say the least. So there's nothing unusual, by the way, with regard to the Senate. South Dakota Senator John Thune is likely going to run things just because of the sheer majority that they have up there. But the House, the House has nothing going on until they get a speaker. So if Mike Johnson does not get the required 217 votes, yeah, could be a bit of a problem. So yeah. Because of the fact that the Republican caucus only has 219 members in the whole thing, Johnson can only afford to lose 2 and no more. And I've already told you, Tom Massey has already declared that he's not going to do it. And Chip Roy has kind of suggested that he is not going to do it either. So we're just going to have to see. I mean, any Republican that he loses, he's going to have to get back get a Democrat vote, which of course is not going to look good. Now, honestly, whether or not Mike Johnson actually gets back in the speakership or not, to me, it's sort of like a moot point in a way, because if Mike Johnson is the only one who's running for the position, and he's the only one who is able to get the votes, you kind of have no other choice. It's sort of like having a 2-party system. You can't sit here and, say that you want something different when the only 2 parties that are available are Democrats and Republicans. Okay? I don't really care, honestly, whether or not Mike Johnson becomes speaker or not. But what I do want is I want whoever is speaker to basically lay down the law and say, look, this is what we're going to do, period. And not be like the whole Charlie Brown wishy-washy type thing. Now, unfortunately, the Republican Party is not very well known to be able to, shall we say, circle the wagons like the Democrats can. So don't be surprised if you see more than 1 vote tomorrow, or more than maybe 5 votes tomorrow to have this run. But here's the thing. If you recall, when Kevin McCarthy became speaker, there was actually a change to the House rules. That change to the House rules was that it only takes one person, one person to call for a vote of no confidence to potentially kick the speaker out. Now, this is how we ended up with Mike Johnson. Because if you recall, we had Kevin McCarthy. Now, the challenge here, of course, is once Johnson gets confirmed, or whoever gets put in, is that the Republicans themselves, because keep in mind, when they did this, the Republicans were in charge. When they did this, this was a bow down sort of to the Democrats and the specific Republican caucus that was like the Matt Gaetzes and those kinds of folks. Well, now there's a chance that the Republicans are going to make the change, especially if Johnson gets in, that the House Republicans may make a change to that rule. And that rule change is potentially going to make it harder to oust him and future speakers. So there's a proposed measure that's ready to get dropped once the speakership is done, and it's a proposed measure that's going to increase the threshold for initiating a motion to vacate, requiring a total of 9 members of the majority party to co-sponsor the motion. Now, that means that 9 Republicans, because they currently dominate the lower chamber, that 9 Republicans would have to co-sponsor any motion to vacate. So again, as I said, right now, as it stands, because of Kevin McCarthy agreed to this rule change, all they need is 1 at this point. Well, it seems like the Republicans may have kind of learned a little bit off of that and are now thinking, you know what? It's probably not a bad idea for us to make it a little harder to oust the speaker. And so we're going to have to watch that as well to kind of see what's going on. So yeah, there's a lot of back and forth as to whether or not Johnson is, going to be an effective speaker or not. I admit he hasn't been the most, what I would consider, strict conservative, even though his voting record in the past had demonstrated that he was a strict conservative. I think that he has now been put in a position where he understands or realizes that he's got to do a little bit more horse trading, let's say, in order to get things done. But unfortunately, that's not the kind of speaker that we need. And that was Kevin McCarthy. For all of his faults, Kevin McCarthy was definitely one that tended to work with both sides. And he also was one who was able to fundraise very efficiently for incoming House representatives. And, whatever you want to say about Kevin McCarthy, that was one thing that he did. But of course, he obviously was a little wishy-washy for most. And unfortunately, this seems like, at least in his past performance, that Johnson may potentially still be wishy-washy. Don't forget the whole idea of the FISA warrants that he allowed to go by. That, to me, should have been one of those principled stances that he should have stood on and said, no, we're not going to extend this. But he caved, and he allowed it to happen. So, like I said, in my mind, he is not exactly in the positive column. But the reality of it is that we essentially only have 2 years with this very slim majority assured. Now, there is a large possibility, that come the midterms, we end up gaining a few more seats. However, the reality of it is that we only have 2 years of this kind of situation. And so we're going to have to potentially bite the bullet and keep Johnson around for a little while longer. But that is up to the Republicans in the House of Representatives at this point. So Democrats obviously have criticized the proposal to change it because of the fact that they are planning probably to go ahead and they're planning on going ahead and logging a complaint. So this obviously is going to dash them, which is, I mean, regardless of whoever's in charge, this is exactly what happens. The one party gets in charge and they change the rules in order to make it benefit them. That's just the way it works for whatever reason, because there's no integrity, we should say, within politicians. All right, folks. One last thing. Because of all the stuff that's been going on, most people have kind of forgotten about the whole drone situation. Well, apparently, according to Blaze Media, the FAA has quietly expanded a ban on drones in New Jersey, and yet hasn't really said anything about it as to why. So, again, we've got drones that are still there, but I guess in Tuesday, the FAA announced that it was expanding its list of areas in New Jersey where drone flights are banned. And so now we're just going to they added another 9 towns into the restricted areas, and still no word on what is going on. Although the FBI did investigate and was claiming after starting their investigation that there was no threat to public safety. But yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. So that's kind of an update on the whole drone thing. So anyway, all right. That is it for me for tonight. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It's free. And once you are signed up and signed in, find the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to make sure you get notified every time I go live. Also, too, don't forget to hit all those thumbs up and like buttons across all of my channels, whether it is YouTube, X, Facebook, and, of course, the aforementioned Rumble. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.